to the beginning of the Game Master's Guide that I am going to start making. This is for you as the player or the Game Master, or both, to understand the game better. We really value the playability of our game. We want it to be beginner friendly as well as just easy to jump into. There's a lot of people who are interested in becoming more sustainable but don't know much about role-playing. We wanted to make as accessible as possible. I am going to start by explaining the character sheets, and you can ask in the comments other questions if you found the gameplay confusing. What are actions actually? What are age differences? Why do they matter? How does time? Ask them in the comments if anything is unclear, or if you're just curious. There's no requirements. Just ask away. First order of business is the first page of the character sheet. Birth certificate of means that is the slot where you put your name. It doesn't have to be the first thing you do. It's definitely not common to have a name first thing. So just because it's at the top of the page, it doesn't have to be the first thing you get done. I'm just gonna go through everything how it's spaced out on the paper. So we go from top to bottom, from page 1 to page 3. So it's easier to kind of visually understand what I'm talking about. The name, no rules on the name, as long as you have a name or some sort of something that your character will be known by. If you want to be mysterious and don't tell them your name, that's perfectly fine. But just for the sake of character building, it's very good if they have a name. Point number 2, born in. That is your country, and if you want your cultures beyond borders slot. So it's not definitely where you're born, and you don't have to be born into all of the religions, but it's still a good place where you can note that. As I've said previously, the cultures beyond borders part is optional. You don't have to roll for that, and if you don't, you can just use the stats for local, but I think it's always fun to add more depth and more, character to your character. In the born in section of the NPC sheets, there's a number. It's their birth date, because they're NPCs, so they're not supposed to be from any particular country or place. They are supposed to have a set age, and that's why giving them an age is more important. And you're still born in a year, so grammatically it just works to put that there. That's why there's a difference between the player sheets and the NPC sheets. I am working on the maps, and I'm making cities and capitals in all of the countries. Those will not have any statistical relevance, but they might have a cultural relevance depending on how much time I have. I always make everything harder for myself, but regardless, I'm working on that. That can also be written in the born in section. If you want to set your character's age, I just wrote it underneath the born in section, because age isn't super relevant in the gameplay. There's one rule that is affected by the age, and that is if your character is a legal adult, it will affect how they are perceived. So if someone under 18 is talking to someone over 40, there is going to be a difference in their status. I can show that rule here. That's the born in section. Moving on to inventory. The inventory part, I felt like I was extremely unclear in the first video. It has to be canon that you have them on you. So for example, a rock, or any and all kind of objects that you're like, oh, I want to have this. For example, Celeste wanted to have a towel.
And I get like a towel because I'm cheating and I'm saying I have a towel on me.
I can say you have a piece of fabric.
Yes, piece of fabric. And I'm like, here, clean your...
They were like, oh, I think I have a towel. And I'm like, well, look at your inventory. Is it reasonable for your character to have a towel? You're supposed to, if you see objects that you want to pick up, or if you pick up objects unwillingly. Write them in your inventory so that the game master knows for sure that you have that object, because you can't really just materialize objects. Just so there is consistency, that is what you're supposed to do. After inventory, we do class. That is pretty self-explanatory. It works the same way as how you get your country of origin. You roll a d4 and then get 1 out of 4 classes, but I'll get into that in a bit. Moving on to picture. Kind of the same thing as the name part. You don't have to have, there are no rules around the picture. You can draw however you want, whatever you want. It's not connected to any of the gameplay itself. It's just good for you, your character, your fellow players, and definitely for your game master to know what everyone's character looks like. So just keep it in mind. It's sportsmanship, I guess. If you're like, oh, I don't want to draw, I refuse, I like to advise my players to do Pinterest boards. And if you feel uncomfortable drawing and showing them, you can just give them sort of a vibe, or like a playlist. I've had people do, just make sure people understand who your character is. Alright, so I said when I talked about class that I was going to get into the d4 rolling and what I mean by that. So we can look at the skill part of the character sheet, and you will see that you have 6 slots in the general skills section. That means that you're gonna have to go through the country of origin that you got. So how do you get your country of origin and your class? Well, starting with the country of origin, you roll a d20. This is my d20. You roll a d20 and you will get a number. That number corresponds to one of the 20 countries, as you can see here on the map. And that is how you get your country of origin. As you can see, there is information about the country, and then underneath there is a little stat box. And those are what we're gonna look at right now. So as you can see, you see the same kind of table as you would see in your general skills part of your character sheet. So I roll a d20, I got the number 2. These are the stats I got for this country. I can skip the cultures beyond borders part because that doesn't really affect your general stats. Now we roll a d4 for class. This is the d4. God, my nails are awful. Don't look at my nails. I got a 2. That is the stats. I can also, if you're confused, I can show you this picture, because now you go to abilities. In the abilities section, you once again roll your d20. You do it 5 times to get 5 different abilities. That's how I did it, that's how you're supposed to do it. If you want to, you can choose your own abilities. If you want to have more creative freedom over your character, that is how it's a possibility. It's not against the rules, but it's kind of iffy. All of those abilities have their own stats to their relevant sort of category. So now, we have our final numbers, and we can put them in on our character sheets, and that would look like this. I'm going to explain more in a second, but first I'm going to talk about actions, because they look weird, don't they? Why are general skills and actions different, but have the same stats? Well, I'm glad you asked. The general skills are kind of a base layer. Characteristics everyone has that kind of fuels everything they do. And since I can't explicitly write about every single action you can possibly do, because that would take too long, I have generalized it in. I have picked the 8 most common actions that are based on the general skills, so that when you want to do something, you understand how to do it. For example, if a player wants to leave a room, that would count as escaping, and you would then understand that to escape, they would need agility. Or if a person is looking for something, you would understand that they should roll for finding, and you would understand that their ability to find something is dependent on their attention. The actions are kind of fueled by the general skills, and that is why they are related, and that is why they are separated. Now, what are these stats, and what am I talking about? Well, if you're fully new to role-playing games, I understand that you're confused. So, let me explain. When you want to do an action, when you're role-playing, roll a d20 to see if you are successful. So, for example, if I am playing as Lydia and I want to convince someone I see on the street who has a cute dog to let me pet their dog, I would have to roll for status, which means I, as the character Lydia, have to roll a d20, and then I would get a number, got a 6, which means that I add 6 to my stats for status, which is 8, and that would be 14. 14 is barely successful. If you're on 10 or anything under, you are unsuccessful, meaning that you, when trying to do your action, it backfires and it hurts you. If you're over 10, you are successful to varying degrees. I got a 14, which means I was kind of successful, meaning when Lydia tried to pet the dogs, dog owner was like, sure, yeah, you can pet them, but the dogs were not very happy and they did not want Lydia to pet them. That's how that outcome would be. If I rolled and I got a 20, that would mean I was very successful, and the outcome is more positive than I initially thought. So maybe the dog owner would be like, oh yes, of course you can pet my dogs, you can even have them if you want. And then that would make Lydia extremely successful. If you get over 20, that is so, you are so successful that will continue to be positive for your character. So if they try to pet their other dogs, or if Lydia wants to talk further with the dog owner, that would be an immediate success. Yes, if Lydia had failed, if she had gotten under 10, if she got like around 5, maybe the dog owner would have been very rude and would have been like, no, don't touch my dog. I don't like you now, and I'm not gonna want to listen to anything else you have to say. If I get a 1, which I call a critical fail, it would hurt me. So maybe the dog would bite me, or maybe the dog owner would like slap me away. Whether or not you are successful when trying to do things is determined by your d20 roll plus your stats. And that is how role-playing works. I am going to, in the future of the Game Master guides, to explain sort of more specific situations. So the actions and how to be successful, how to proceed. There's going to be a lot of information on how you as the Game Master can coach your players through that, and how you can understand that better as well. And like I said before, if you have any questions, even though I'm trying to be as clear as possible, I understand that I'm missing parts because I, as a creator, will of course overlook what I find. But that is why I need you. I need you to tell me I'm stupid and explain why I'm what I'm missing. What are you not understanding? How am I unclear? Please tell me. Moving on to notes, which is the last part of the character sheet. We can start with the relationships. This is typically a space for all the players to write their relationships towards each other. For example, if they all create their characters together, you as the GM can ask them, how do you know each other? Are you from the same country? Maybe your families know each other. And you can have kind of pre-established relationships so that the characters will feel more natural and they will have a more reasonable reason to be working together. I don't really like to do it that way. I mean, of course, when I'm GMing, I like to make sure that all the characters know each other, but that's not what I like to use the relationship part for. I like to write my characters' family relationships and important persons that character knows, just to give them some more depth. Or you can do how most people do and write the characters' relationships with each other. So like the players that are canon and real, you can write those relationships there as well. You can do however they want. As the GM, you don't have to pick one right way to fill out the character sheets. It's everyone works in their own way. Health points, pretty self-explanatory. When you get hurt, you take damage, and when you rest, which means fully resting, when you have a safe space, it doesn't have to be a bed, in a position where they can actually leave the situation and go to actual rest, all the damage will be restored and they will be healed. They can also be healed by these healing objects that are under the objects section in the book. Now to the bottom of the page, objects. I've been talking a lot about objects and like I said in the beginning of the video, what is the difference between objects and inventory? Well, inventory is just random things that you find and you carry on yourself, unlike your objects, which are either healing or hurting objects, so they can be weapons or medicine. What's important about objects is that they have stats. So for example, the pocket knife,
weapon like perhaps a pocket knife? I think a pocket knife.
You're right, pocket knife. Weight, 500 grams. Range, about 30 centimeters. And damage/healing is negative 10 HP. And why it's negative 10 is because it deals damage. It doesn't heal, so it takes away health points. But what happens when you are trying to hurt or heal someone without an object? For example, if you're trying to punch someone with your bare fists, what do you do? How does that deal damage? Well, first you have to roll to see if the attempt is successful. So you do like you normally would, you roll for hurting, and if you are successful, then your opponent rolls for escaping, kind of depending on if they're trying to escape or not. But your opponent also has a chance to counterattack, and if they are unsuccessful, you have dealt damage. How much damage have you dealt? So what do? You roll a d10. That's this dice. It kind of looks like a UFO. Roll your d10 to get a number between 0 and 9. And that is the number that will determine the amount of damage you give. So if you punch someone, successful in trying to punch them, they are unsuccessful in avoiding your attack, you roll your d10. If you roll a 0, you deal 0 damage. Maybe you're using an object that isn't traditionally seen as a weapon, like a stick. It will not add to your damage because those are too far off. Unless it's an actual weapon, it will not deal any extra damage. But if you're trying to heal someone without any sort of medicine, it's the same process. You roll for healing. I don't know why they would try to counterattack, but if they do not counterattack and you're successful in healing them, you still roll a d10 and heal that amount of damage. If you're healing more than the person needs, they will not get extra health points. The health points are set. Alright, so that was kind of everything for the character sheet section. If you have any questions, if anything is unclear, which, I understand that if it's unclear, I promise it's not you, it's me. Please let me know. I make this as easy as I can for you guys. The Game Master's Guide mini-series is going to continue as I have planned, and we are going to show how you as the Game Master can guide your players, or how you as the Game Master yourself will proceed in weird, uncomfortable, or odd situations. Speaking of which, exciting announcement, we have made stop cards. We are looking for ways to put them into the physical release, but it's a bit of a struggle right now, but we're working on it. We're working on making this game as accessible as possible. Thank you so much, have a lovely day, and stay connected.